Hello, class. This is Miss Morris. Today's lesson, you will be able to determine if a triangle is or is not a right triangle. Remember, a right triangle is a triangle with a 90-degree angle. Also, you'll be able to find the missing side length of a right triangle. If you look at the lettering in red, my question to you is x equals 57 a solution to the problem to the right? So what I would like you to do is go ahead on the back of your notes, figure out whether x equals 57 is a solution or not a solution to the problem to the right. So go ahead and pause the video, complete it on the back of your notes, and then resume the video when you're ready. Okay, so you should have plugged 57 in where you saw x, and you would end up with 195 equals 196. Well, they do not equal each other. This is not a solution. So these are the things that we've been working on. Today, by the end of this lesson, you should be able to solve something that looks like this. So this is x squared plus 81 equals 196. So real world application for this is finding the length of the diagonal of a pool table. Or another example of this, if you wanted to install a zip line. Let's say you have 200 feet of rope and you want to install a zip line, and you know that the height is 100 of your tower, and then the length to where you want to end is 175. Would you have enough cable to make a zip line? So that's your real world examples. Let's go ahead and get on to the notes. Okay, so you should have your notes out. They should look like this. Let's go ahead and go over some vocabulary terms for a right triangle. So the first vocab term that we are going to talk about is the legs of a right triangle. So you see the picture here is an example of a right triangle. It has a 90-degree angle. That's this little box here that lets us know that it's a 90-degree triangle. And the legs here. So the legs are what the 90-degree angle is formed by. The legs are perpendicular to each other. And it's the two edges that form the right angle. So again, if I highlight this, forms this kind of backwards L, or it might be a forwards L shape. Those are the legs. And with the Pythagorean theorem, before I give you the Pythagorean theorem, we always label the legs A and B. I mean, you could label it with whatever, but most typically you will see A and B. It doesn't matter which leg you label A or which leg you label B, but you need to label them A and B. Okay, so those are the legs. Next term that you guys need to know is the hypotenuse. So the hypotenuse, easy way to figure out the hypotenuse is it's across from the 90-degree angle. It's always across from the 90-degree angle, and it is the longest edge. Okay, this edge is opposite, like I said, opposite of the right angle. And we label this, we always label this one C. So go ahead and label it C. So a right triangle, to recap, the right triangle is made up of two legs that form a 90-degree angle. And across from that 90-degree angle is our hypotenuse, the longest edge, and we're going to label that C. Now, Pythagorean theorem, what we're talking about today. The theorem for this is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So this says the sum of the square of the legs, so remember sum means addition, is equal to the sum of the is equal to the square of the hypotenuse. So this is part of your notes. Let's look at the second part of your notes here. So what are we going to use this Pythagorean theorem for? Well, first, we're going to use it to prove if a figure is a right triangle. So if we look at this example, here we have this triangle. It does not have the 90-degree mark. We don't know if it's a right triangle, but we do know the side lengths. We know that the side lengths are 5, 13, and 12. So we can use the Pythagorean theorem to figure out if it's a right triangle. Now, the 13 would be considered the hypotenuse because it's the longest edge. So that's where you would plug it in for C. And then the other two, the 5 and the 12, would be considered the legs. So you would plug it in for A and B. When we do that, we'll get 5 squared plus 12 squared equals 13 squared. But we're not quite sure if it equals 13 squared. So we need to keep evaluating this. So 5 squared is 25. 12 squared is 144. If we add those together, we get 169. 13 squared is also 169. Since this is a true statement, it is a right triangle. The second use that we will use it for is to find a missing length of a triangle. So for example here, we have the two measures of the legs. They're 5 meters and 20 meters. We need to figure out the hypotenuse, the C. So we'd plug the information that we do know into our formula, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, and we would solve until we got an answer. And so that missing side length would be 20.6 meters. Go ahead and grab out your assignment for today. Okay, you should have your assignment out. We're going to start on the front side. I'm going to complete number 1 with you, give you an opportunity to do number 2 on your own. So this whole front side, we need to determine whether each triangle with sides of given lengths is a right triangle. So for number 1, we are given 3 side lengths, 28, 195, and 197. And we need to figure out whether or not it's a right triangle. First thing I would like you to do is go ahead and label A, B, and C because we're going to use a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Now, when we're looking at these 3, remember the C has to be the longest length. So when I'm looking at these 3 numbers, this has to be my C because it's the longest one, okay? And again, it doesn't matter what you label the other 2. I'm just going to keep it in order. So this is A, B, and C. And I'm going to use the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. We're going to plug those numbers in. So A is 28, so 28 squared. Plus B is 195, so 195 squared, equals, well, we're not quite sure, but we're going to see if it equals 197 squared. So 28 times 28 is going to give us 784, plus 195 times 195 is going to be 38,025. And we need to see if that equals 197 times 197 is 38,809. So next step, let's add together 784 plus 38,025. When we add those 2 together, we get 38,809, which that equals 38,809. Since they equal each other, we can say, yes, this is a right triangle. Okay, so what I would like you to do is go ahead and pause the video, get as much as you possibly can get done with number 2, see if you can complete the whole thing, and then resume the video when you are ready. Okay, were you able to get this far in your steps? Maybe a little bit further? So we figured out what A, B, and C are. Now I just need to go ahead and add 900 to 14,884, and I will get 15,784, which is not equal to 15,625. Since they are not equal, then we can say, no, this is not a right triangle. Okay, so you have 4 more of those problems to try on your own. Remember that the longest length is your C value. Okay, let's go ahead and flip it over to the back side. We are going to do problems 7 and 9. So I'm going to do 7 with you. I'm going to see if we can set up number 9, and we'll go through both of those problems together. So let's begin with number 7. We're going to, the directions say, write an equation you can use to find the length of the missing side of each right triangle, then find the missing length, round to the nearest tenth if necessary. So before we get started on this, I would like you to go ahead and click the link for the Desmos calculator that's on our agenda. You should pull up a calculator that looks like this. We will need to use this for today's lesson. Okay, so number 7. We're starting with number 7. We are going to use the Pythagorean theorem, which is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Now, again, the hypotenuse, the longest side of this triangle, is across from the 90-degree angle. So that's already marked for us C. Now let's go ahead and label the other 2 lengths. So I'm going to label this side A and this one B. It doesn't matter which side or which leg you use for A and B, just as long as you have it labeled. Okay, let's begin. Let's plug it into our formula. So our A here is 27, so we're going to do 27 squared, plus our B, which is 36, 36 squared, equals C squared. We don't know what our C is. That's what we are going to find. Okay, let's continue on with this. So 27 times 27 will give us 729, plus 36 times 36 will give us 1,296 equals C squared. Next, we need to add those 2 together. And we get 2,025 equals C squared. Now, we've learned about squares on our previous unit. So what is the opposite of squaring something? Because remember, we want to get C. We want to figure out what the length of C equals, not what the length of C squared equals. So we need to undo that. The opposite of squaring something is to take the square root. And what we do to one side, we must do to the other. Just going to go ahead and cancel those out. So we're left with C on the left side. And now we need to do the square root. We need to figure out the square root of 2025. That's where this calculator is going to come in handy. So use your Desmos calculator here. This button right here right in front of sine and under a squared, you're going to click that. That's our square root. We're going to type in 2025, and our answer is 45. We're going to go back to our problem. The square root of 2025 is 45. So C equals 45. Our answer is 45 feet. Remember, we got to take the positive number here because we are talking about a length here. We cannot have a negative length. And we want to check. C is supposed to be the longest length. Is it the longest length? It is, because the legs are 27 and 36. 45 is the longest length. It is larger than both 27 and 36. So that works out. Let's go ahead and get on to number 9. Go ahead and see if you can label it and plug it into our formula, our a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Go ahead and get the problem set up. See if you can complete as much as you can, and unpause the video when you're ready to figure out the answer. Okay, were you able to make it this far? Hopefully you were. So to set this up, on this particular problem, we are trying to find one of the legs. We know the hypotenuse, but now we don't know what the leg is. So again, I just plugged in the numbers as shown in the formula, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, and this is where I'm at so far. So next thing, we need to get a by itself. We need to isolate the variable. In order to do that, we need to undo the plus 100. So I'm going to subtract 100 from both sides. 100 minus 100, that's just going to give me 0. So we don't need to worry about that. And we are going to bring down the a squared equals 225 minus 100 is going to give me 125. And then I'm down to this part where I need to undo the square. And to undo the square, I'm going to take the square root of both sides. Okay, take the square root. I'm left with a equals square root of 125. We could approximate that, but on this unit we are using calculators, and it does say in the directions that it wants you to approximate it to the nearest tenth. So go ahead, use your calculator. We're going to type in the square root button. Whoops, too many square roots. One square root button and 125. As you can see, it says it's 11.18033 and so forth. We are going to round up, so it's going to be 11.2. Let's go back to the worksheet. So A is not equal to, but it's approximately 11.2 centimeters. And again, let's check to make sure that makes sense in our problem. So A is a leg. It's not the hypotenuse, so it should not be the longest side, and it's not because 15 is longer than 11.2. So looks good. You have 4 problems on this side to complete. And last but not least, I would like to go over your homework that is due tomorrow. So this worksheet will be due tomorrow, but you also had some word problems you were working on. So the back side of the worksheet, it asks you to define the variable, write the equation, and then the solving was optional. So here are the equations for each of the problems. So this is on the back side. We're going to start with number 9. Now you guys should have went ahead and defined each variable. So remember, defining the variable, you tell me what your letter means. You might have different letters than what I used here. So for example, number 9, you should have that x equals the number of students. Right? Number 10, it should be A equals weekly allowance. 11 should be P equals cost of each pencil, and so forth. So you should have all your variables defined. You should have the equation. If you solve them, here are the answers that you can check. Remember, we do have a quiz tomorrow. So we're going to go through this. Here's 11 and 12. 13 and 14. 15 and 16. 17 and 18. Please email me if you have any questions. I hope you guys have a wonderful day.